There's a lot of comments after the PBS comment by Mr. Romney about the PBS comment about Big Bird and that kind of thing, that we need to stop funding for PBS, and I just think it's interesting how people are reacting and saying, why would you attack public TV when it's just such a minority of the funding? Why would you attack public TV as sort of a scapegoat? So this is kind of coming back on Mr. Romney. There are some videos that are going viral with there's a PBS digital studio video of Mr. Rogers, the late Mr. Rogers, that's going viral now, and several others. When people think about the worth of public TV, they think about Mr. Rogers' Sesame Street and all the great programs. Some of this video here.
Did you ever pretend about things like that? Did you ever throw anything in the garden of your mind?
It's called The Garden of Your Mind.
You can grow
And it's digitally remixed by PBS Digital Studios.
It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think, and they'll grow.
Some great things about imagination that public TV encourages young minds to grow, and if Romney is just for the status quo of not realizing the excellence of public TV and what it does, bypassing that excellence. It's a great revealer of what he thinks, that he does not value something that helps our culture quite a bit. So that's my quick bit on Mr. Rogers. Today on Facebook I posted a quote from the late Fred Rogers. He said, quote, "We've got to have more of this neighborhood expression of care, and this is what I give. I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him or her realize that he or she is unique. I end the program by saying, you've made this day a special day by just being you, by your being you. There's no person in the world like you. I like you just the way you are. I feel if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we have done a great service for mental health." So that's pretty strong words, and he was brighter than this stereotype that, and sometimes he was very stereotyped by Eddie Murphy and Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood and that kind of thing. Very stereotyped and not well understood, but he was quite a genius actually. So R.I.P. Rest in peace, Mr. Rogers, and your voice is still being heard in this debate, with Romney scathing the PBS fans. So that's a little bit about Fred Rogers and PBS, and it's still very, very germane in our world. We need to pause and think about what is important. So, hey, go Big Bird, yay, right? Some articles here on World News. Some interesting things in Google News. Romney says the risk of conflict is higher in the Middle East after Obama policies, so he's really pouring the heat on. Mitt Romney accused Obama of leading a rudderless foreign policy, saying today that the threat of conflict in the Middle East is greater than it was 4 years ago. The Republican presidential nominee delivered a major policy address at the Virginia Military Institute, which was intended to distinguish Romney from Obama on questions of foreign policy, while also casting Romney as a steady presidential and plausible commander-in-chief for voters. The speech focused heavily on upheaval in the Middle East, the attack on a U.S. diplomatic mission in Libya, popular uprisings in Syria and Egypt, and the Iranian nuclear threat, of course, the program, and America's relationship with Israel, to level the charge that Obama had chosen to lead from behind as president. So he's risking Romney is risking our security, really risking how strong the nation is perceived by he's campaigning, and he's putting us at more risk, which is, he doesn't really care as long as his interests are served, really. He's putting us at great risk here, I think. The president is fond of saying that the tide of war is receding, and what to believe him as much as everybody else. Romney said, when we look at the Middle East today, it's clear the risk of conflict in the region is higher than when the president took office. Romney essentially argued that in most instances, Obama had failed to project a clear and coherent American policy abroad. The GOP presidential hopeful suggested he would use U.S. power with greater clarity, taking a tougher tack versus Iran and working to support allied forces in Syria, where the Assad regime has launched assaults on rebels that have left thousands dead. Much of the speech dealt with the recent outbreak of violence in Libya, where a siege on a U.S. consulate waged apparently by terrorists left 4 Americans dead, including U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens, and the horrible details of that attack too. That Stevens was sexually assaulted before he was killed or something. Just awful stuff. And by Romney saying that we're weak, it just opens the door for more trouble, really. Romney said those attacks were likely the work of forces affiliated with those that attacked our homeland on September 11th, reflecting emerging admission by the Obama administration that Libya's incident was a terrorist attack rather than a spontaneous protest connected to a web video about Islam, as had originally been thought. Romney's handling of the immediate aftermath of the Benghazi attack, though, had partly prompted his decision to deliver such a broad-reaching foreign policy address as today's. The candidate earlier had charged the administration with essentially siding with the attackers on the U.S. consulate, an argument that was labeled by critics as capricious since it was just hours after Stevens' death. So Romney's going to go as extreme as he can on this. It is the responsibility of our president to use America's great power to shape history, not to lead from behind, leaving our destiny at the mercy of events. Unfortunately, is exactly what we find ourselves in the Middle East under Obama. That theme echoed throughout Romney's remarks, which concluded a vow to tighten sanctions against Iran's nuclear program and reverse a set of automatic spending cuts, which would fall heavily on the defense budget, set to take place at the beginning of 2013. Romney also called for a closer relationship between the U.S. and Israel, a hallmark of the Republican nominees' campaign speeches, along with expanded free trade pacts in the Middle East and beyond. So Obama is looking at human rights across the whole spectrum, and Romney is calling for, nope, it's just Israel. You can only side with those guys, and it's black and white and that kind of thing. So he's saying he's trying to simplify it for many of his followers or even undecided voters. He's saying, it's pretty simple. Obama's just not tough. He needs to get tougher. So he's simplifying, much as Rush Limbaugh would simplify an issue for somebody who is of lower intelligence and more vulnerable to rhetoric. That's just pretty much the same thing. He's just not a tough guy. Obama's a wimp. We need to go in there and kick some butt. Pretty much. Foreign policy and national security strategy, though, will each be litigated further over the course of the campaign. One of the 2 remaining debates between Obama and Romney will be mostly dedicated to foreign policy. This Thursday, vice presidential debate will pit Ryan versus Romney, the vice presidential candidates. So that should be pretty interesting. I think there's some articles too on Ryan and Romney. The fact that Ryan's health, the Medicare was so extreme, and how that will reflect in the debate against Biden. I'm just checking to see if there's any. There's a lot of debate, bigger bang expected from the Ryan-Romney bout. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It's a big bang expected from the debate, I guess, apparently. When Paul Ryan and Joe Biden debate Thursday night as their party's nominees, there will likely be more fireworks than when their running mates met on stage, according to advisors. Mr. Biden has suggested he's eager to draw bright contrasts between himself and his Republican counterpart in the aftermath of Obama's lackluster debate performance. I'm looking forward to it, I really am, said Mr. Biden. And the thing about Congressman Paul Ryan is he's been straightforward up until now. All the significant changes he wants to make, we have a fundamentally different view on a whole range of issues. Mr. Ryan also is preparing for a confrontational bout, having told the conservative magazine The Weekly Standard he expects Mr. Biden to be in full attack mode. The 2 candidates will meet in their only debate at College Center in Danville, Kentucky. Based on past presidential debates, it's not likely to have much impact on the race as the presidential forums, but you never know if they're Ryan puts his foot in his mouth, pretty big time, it could have a huge effect. If Biden or Ryan do it, I guess, obviously, hopefully, Joe will be pretty good. He'll be pretty prepared. Joe will probably try to paint Ryan as an extremist on Medicare and Social Security and abortion, which he is. Paint that picture of Ryan and let it set in the American mind a little bit. He's not your just good old American boy, average American, smiling, charming boy. He's much more dangerous, I think. Vice presidential candidate Biden is 69 years old. On the campaign, he's shown a lot of energy for a 69-year-old. He recently said the middle class had been buried during the past 4 years, a time when Mr. Obama was in office. Mr. Ryan has served nearly 14 years in Congress, but he's new to the arena of presidential campaign. Thursday's event will involve facing an adversary more directly than required in the set-piece debates among the lawmakers on the House floor. Conservatives are licking their chops at the prospects of Paul Ryan debating Joe Biden. I just don't think there's any evidence that Mr. Ryan is intellectually superior at all. I think it's just the opposite. He's a lot of flair, Mr. Ryan. He's a good manipulator. He's a lot of flair. He's no hair out of place, perfect suit. But there's no evidence that he's any smarter than Joe Biden. Biden aides signal a likely strategy will be to press Mr. Ryan to defend the GOP ticket's tax and budget policies in more detail. The question is whether Paul Ryan will level with the American people about the consequences of their plan. So there it is. That's pretty much what it is. And I'll be looking forward to the debate on Thursday. I'll have some more thoughts on the Ryan-Biden debate coming up Thursday. I'll have some more thoughts on that. So until then, so long.